Texas, Mr. Allred.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've worked hard now in my 5 years, going into my 5th year in this body to develop a reputation and a record of bipartisanship, of working on issues like veterans' health care and benefits, on infrastructure, on paid leave, trying to improve folks' lives. To me, this subcommittee and this hearing is a disgrace. There's nothing to do with helping Americans struggling, nothing to do with helping families like mine growing up. I was raised by a single mother. It's just been an airing of grievances, of debunked claims and conspiracy theories. I think most folks watching back home are having a hard time following some of what y'all are saying because you have to go so far down the rabbit hole. Now, before I was elected to Congress, I was a civil rights lawyer. I served as an appointed lawyer in the Obama administration. And I believe in Congress's Article I duties to conduct oversight and the executive branch's responsibilities to enforce the law and work with us. That nexus is governed by the accommodation process, which ensures that there's trust and prevents politicians from meddling in the Department of Justice and into its investigations. Now, on January 20th, the Justice Department sent a letter to the chairman saying that we share your belief that congressional oversight is vital to our functioning democracy, and we're committed to cooperating with legitimate efforts to seek information consistent with our obligation to protect executive branch confidentiality interests. They said the department's mission is to independently and impartially uphold the rule of law, requires us to maintain the integrity of our investigations, prosecutions, and civil actions, and to avoid even a perception that our efforts are being influenced by anything but the law and the facts. Despite that, the chairman of this committee has sought to seek numerous documents related to the FBI's ongoing investigations into the January 6th Capitol insurrection cases and other domestic terrorist cases, many of which are open investigations and are ongoing. Mr. Baker, just to set a tone here, do you agree that the attack on the Capitol on January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Do you agree the attack on the Capitol on January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism?
I don't think I'm in a position to judge that. It was an act of lawlessness. There was a lot of property destroyed.
You're here as an expert,
and there were
sir.
crimes committed
based on your experience.
By trespassing. I don't know if that rises to the level of terrorism, quite frankly. It might,
well, what
would
constitute domestic terrorism to you, sir?
Domestic terrorism is acts of violence to influence political decisions. That's what we
know what we do on January 6th every 4 years?
Well, January 6th to me looked like a riot.
It was a seditious
It was lawless.
conspiracy.
It was lawless. There was property destroyed. There was trespassing. There were people injured. Those are all crimes.
Thankfully, numerous courts and juries have disagreed with you and have found many of those insurrectionists guilty. It was an act of domestic terrorism, and I thank you for clarifying for all of us here that you can't decide whether it was or not. I want to go to you, Mr. Williams, because I think that we need to be very careful here. Nobody really wants members of Congress or politicians jumping into ongoing criminal investigations for many good reasons that I think you lay out in your testimony. Can you give us just a few reasons of why it would be a major problem for criminal investigations to suddenly be subject to the whim of a politician?
I'd say 3 reasons, Congressman Allred, and thank you for that question. One, as articulated in the letter by the Deputy Attorney General that was quoted by, I believe it was Congressman Raskman earlier, you do not want the public to get a roadmap for how investigations are going to play out. That involves tipping off witnesses or defendants who might be brought into the system. So that's point one. You just don't want to give the roadmap, and that's the word used by the Justice Department. Number 2, and this is a big one, the fear of influence or the appearance of influence. If a prosecution continues right after a member of Congress or someone speaks out, the public is left with the perception that Congress, in effect, had its thumb on the scale of a federal prosecution, and that's problematic. And finally, everyone is entitled to a presumption of innocence. The Justice Department takes very seriously the idea that naming or outing people who are not themselves yet criminal defendants is incredibly problematic, dangerous, in a profound manner. So
The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Turley, I saw the effort to discredit you by a member on the other side sort of go down in flames. I don't think much else needs to be said about that. But, I think what is interesting about what you've written and then in your testimony about the Twitter files and your tentative conclusion about what they may indicate is a product. First, it bears repeating. I mean, you said there that it, quote, could well constitute the largest censorship program ever run by the government of the United States. And I think what attracts you is there is a body of evidence. It is not accusations, it is evidence that we would not have but for the voluntary, it may be extraordinarily unlikely, voluntary act of a very wealthy American who had the will and interest to purchase that company and then disclose what its files hold. Here's what's notable. We didn't get any information about what the FBI and the CIA and the ODNI and GEC and all these other agencies are engaged in from those agencies. The American people wouldn't know but for Elon Musk's disclosures and the independent journalists who then used them. You've talked a little bit in response to earlier questions about how there might be enough evidence there, or in other evidence we might be able to get of like kind, to suggest an agency relationship between United States government agencies, the FBI, and these social media platforms that would cross the First Amendment line and violate the rights of Americans whose content was flagged for taken down.
Thank you so much. Turning to you, have you ever worked for Twitter?
No,
Do you have any formal relationship with the company?
no, I just have an account.
Do you have any specific or special or unique knowledge about the inner workings of Twitter?
Nothing beyond the Twitter files and what I read in the media.
So essentially, your responses to the questions here today were your own opinion and pure conjecture.
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I try to base them on what we know from the Twitter files.
Well, but you said that you don't have any specific or unique knowledge of Twitter, but you spoke as if you did. You were asked very specific questions about Twitter's, the way Twitter functions and the decision-making that they make, but yet you don't have any unique or special knowledge about Twitter and have never worked for them. And so this is only just your opinion, would you say, as a Twitter account user?
No, I've come to give legal analysis based on facts that are in the public domain, and I was really referring to I was asked about the Twitter
reclaiming
files.
my time, legal analysis is another word for opinion.
I would think there is some distinction, but yeah, it ultimately is an opinion, but I believe the question to me was based on what the Twitter files show, and that was my reading of the Twitter files.
Right. And again, that's another way of describing your opinion being offered, which was represented as unique and special fact, which you don't possess. Thank you. I yield back the balance.